quite happy that this one's just turned up on the pull-out from the tub. So this one's how to scale stock buying from suppliers. So I'm going to just break down a few of the terms there. So scaling, stock, and like wholesalers. So scaling, obviously, as we know, the act of taking something and growing it without sort of depleting any other resources, sort of just reinvesting and generating through that. Suppliers, people who have the goods, and stock suppliers, the end product from what you get from the suppliers. So today I'm just going to look at this and kind of like address how I scaled up using suppliers and how that's different today, but also what you can kind of take from it and I guess do with that information. So for those that might have seen on a different story, when I started out in vintage sportswear. And when I realised that the charity shops, they were great, but I realised at a point that I had to take an expansive step of growth where I had to essentially go somewhere where I could buy more inventory than I was buying at the moment. So, when you go to the charity shop, it was great for its unpredictability. I didn't know what I was going to find. However, I might travel for 2 hours and find 5 items. I might travel for an hour and find 15. But once you start selling more, you require more. So suppliers, this is where they're a really good use of their service because they're just a supplier of service, of stock at service. A supplier of stock at service is how I would say to them. So when I began, I started trawling eBay and I found my first supplier through there. And that was a supplier who was dealing with vintage 80s sportswear. And I think at the time I'd bought a job lot. I was pretty sure I bought a job lot of sweatshirts. And at that point, after buying the sweatshirt job lot, I noticed that they had more listings. And then what I did was I got in touch with the supplier at the time. And I sort of did it a bit more prematurely than I should have before even selling the stuff that I had. I was like, I really like the stuff I've just bought, and assuming it's all the same, I'd love to work on maybe something where I could, bypass this eBay part and buy the stuff before it goes on eBay. And at that point, back in 2012, we managed to secure something, and that supplier remained one of my main suppliers for 9 years. So when I look at what I did in order to scale up the stock that I was getting from one supplier, I kind of engineered the aspect of loyalty and good faith into what I was doing. I find that if you work with a supplier individually and they know you're serious, yes, there's always going to be lots of other people selling similar styles of stuff, and yes, there's always going to be loads of new wholesalers on the block. But if you find somebody that connects with... 1 minute, let me just shut this door. It's going to annoy me. Sorry, I know you couldn't hear that, but the door was just going in and out of the wind. There's always going to be so many different suppliers. And if you're serious about scaling with the way that you buy stock, I would think that one of the main points I would focus on would be integrating loyalty into your kind of business structure of it. You take people, for example, who maybe deal with, buying and selling mass-produced stock. They most likely have a supplier and they want to keep consistent with that. Because if you if you have a supplier that you're consistent with, not only do you grow as a result of maintaining that relationship, but they grow because they then don't have to look for as many people to use their service. So the person I used at the time was quite a big supplier. I think they dealt with Urban Outfitters and all these other different brands. However, at the time when we was, dealing with buying thousands and thousands of items a month, that kind of took the pressure from them, who would despite their connections, they were a relatively small team. They just had very good connections with Europe and America buying stock. But that continuation of a good relationship and loyalty helped us build like the ability to scale through that stock. What you'll find with a lot of people that do is, and I guess you could probably like reference this to most situations, but if you find a new supplier and you go, oh my God, mate, this is like the best, like your stuff's sick, I'm going to keep coming back. Most suppliers have heard that a lot of times from people. And that's why I guess now we're in this economy where suppliers are definitely like just having websites where they're selling bales and they're selling like things by the kilo. I don't want to say back when, but when I was buying stock, it was about, I was putting pre-orders in for set things and back in the sort of days of like pre-ordering wholesale. But, you know, I respected the wholesaler at the time, respect and the loyalty of things. I knew that what he was doing for me was really good. And at the same time, what I was doing for him was really good. And we both didn't have to spend a lot of time for me finding more people to buy stock from and for him, more people to sell stock to. So if you're looking to scale up through stock and scaling up with sort of suppliers, I would say you definitely have to try a lot of suppliers to know where's going to sit and where's going to align with you. Maybe you've got a really good plug in East Asia, or maybe you've got a really good supply of someone in Italy or somebody in the UK. Whatever works for you, just kind of like look at that relationship and think, is there scalability with this partnership? Because there's always going to be a million people selling loads of vintage, loads of secondhand everywhere. But the truth of the matter is it's all pretty much like the same. Like, obviously certain suppliers wouldn't like me saying that because certain suppliers have definitely different like boutique catered needs. They have different capacities for buying designer, but underlyingly, they're sourcing used textiles and distributing it to retail outlets and to individual sellers, as well as probably retailing themselves. So what I mean by that is, if there's somebody who you really want to work as like with a supplier with, the relationship is just as important as the quality of stock. I used to speak to my supplier all the time, and I think you obviously have that business mind where you're like, I know I'm just giving this guy money, and he can look at you and go, I know I'm just supplying him clothes. But if you kind of like cut away from all that rubbish and go, this is an actual like legit dude or legit woman or legit company, they really got me here. They're like really helping me buy stuff, and they're really like trying to make sure that I get what I'm getting in return as my business continues to succeed, or assuming that I have success with what I'm doing, I'm going to continue to invest in their wholesaling. And that's what I would say the scalability of buying secondhand and vintages from suppliers is, just making sure and ensuring that you're building a good relationship and you're being authentic with that relationship. I tell you right now, the amount of suppliers or wholesalers, if any of you are watching this, please drop a comment. There's a lot of people that will go to a supplier and almost underplay the complete ecosystem of secondhand and vintage. Hi mate, I'm just looking for grade A vintage Adidas from 1980s. I don't want anything else. The sad truth is that that's sought after and rare because it's a lot more of a limited supply. So what my point is there is, when you're looking at the sort of scalability, the loyalty is important with like the loyalty you have with a supplier. If it is, you know, if you're loyal with a supplier as well, if they start to be rubbish, you call them out on it and you go, mate, I had this with a supplier before, and I had it with a supplier who I was dealing with for a long time. And then he sent me like this really like moody like order, and I was like, this is like 4,000 kilos of stock that you've sent me that's like rubbish. And because of the relationship we had, I didn't have to send the stuff back, and he just refunded like parts of the amount or gave me credit. But that was because of the relationship I'd built up. So if you're at a small scale and you're like happy with your eBay buying and you're not really trying to look at the wholesaling community of like buying from a company, that's fair enough. But what I would say about the wholesaling community, and I'm sure they would agree with me saying this on their behalf, is that when you start to deal with suppliers, the loyalty and the respect and the mutual appreciation of what each person is providing in terms of this cog. As in, if I'm buying stock from you, I'm appreciating that I'm helping your business, but you're also helping my business. And if we can build something on this, like me coming in hand picking, us coming and having a talk about what my goals are, most suppliers will adhere to that, because that will just mean that you're looking to invest in their company through a means of buying and sort of selling stock. So that's what I'd say about how to scale up, scale stock through your suppliers. So I hope this video has found you well. This is just stuff that I'm folding up, which is currently, anybody interested, rags and reworks bundles. This is the stuff that we pick that is just no good to go for sale, but it's just too good to miss because it's still branded stuff and it can be upcycled and stuff. So this is going for some bundles later on. So yeah, appreciate you all. Happy Saturday. So when you see this, it might be Monday, but yeah.